Welcome to It Happened in Grand Prairie, Texas. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have made history, some of the people that even moved away and now they're back making more history. And we are very excited today because this is our history tape number 615. And we have a gentleman that is second to none on the dais today, Mr. Hobbs Williams, Jr. And Professor, we are so glad that you're sitting right across from me where we can pamper you and talk about you and do great things and put it on tape. Isn't that exciting?
Thank you for asking me, yes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Hobbs Williams, I've interviewed you and your wife back in the far past.
Oh, yeah.
The two of you all together. But now we're going to talk about the real Hobbs Williams today, and let's start out by giving us your parents' name. Would you do that?
Byron and Lorena Williams.
And Lorraine's maiden name was?
Lorena Hobbs.
Hobbs.
That's where my first name comes from.
That is wonderful, from your mother's lineage. That is great.
Well, there was 3 girls, and I was supposed to carry on the family name.
Carry on the family name. And tell me where you were born.
Sulphur Springs.
Sulphur Springs, oh, down in that good East Texas piney wood country that you love.
Sandburrs and bull nettles.
That's it, yes. And there's not many people that know that the bull nettles, that you can harvest those little nuts on top of it.
Oh, they're great.
Oh, they're good, but you know what? They mess up your hands when you pull them off the bush, don't they?
But they're like eating almonds.
Oh,
they sure are.
Really good. Hard to find nowadays.
Oh, yeah, nobody wants prickly pear anymore.
That's true. All right, and you went to school where in East Texas?
In East Texas?
Yes.
Well, I went to Sulphur Springs High School.
All right.
I went to a 3-room school at Paint Rock, which was 2.5 miles from us. Now, the Paint Rock, is probably down around Georgetown.
Oh, but this one's in Hopkins County?
This one's in Hopkins County.
Okay.
And it doesn't exist anymore, but it was up on what we call the Prairie at that point.
And it had a 3-room school?
3-room school.
Yes.
And I went all the way through that to the 8th grade, and then went into Sulphur Springs to high school.
All right.
But there was only 11 grades then too. You
That's
didn't
right.
have the 12 grades.
At Paint Rock, what was your most favorite teacher? Can you remember any teachers that you had there?
Oh yeah, H.C. Cheek.
Most favorite mentor?
Well, he was the big room. And he was also the principal of the building.
Oh, I see.
I never did like the teacher I had in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade.
But when you got into big room?
Well, she lived next door to us.
Oh, yes.
The next door was half a mile up the road, but that was next door.
Yes.
And the one in the middle room, which was 4, 5, and 6, and then 7 and 8 were in the big room. And I felt like I was bulletproof and hard to do anything with when I was in the 8th grade.
That is so good. Now, when you got to high school, I know that there must have been some favorite people that really tried to steer you in the right direction and motivate you to be sure that Hobbs Williams would go to college and all of the good stuff.
I had 2 that will always stand out in my mind. My chemistry teacher and my history teacher.
Yes.
And my history teacher said, when I went there, he said, "You're Byron's brother, aren't you?" My older brother was Byron Williams, Jr. Of course, there's 6 of us boys. And I said, "Yes, I am." And anyhow, come on down to the 6th boy that came in. She was still teaching school, and she taught all 6 of us history.
How wonderful.
And she asked the baby Joe, said, "And I don't know what your name is, but you are a Williams."
She already
she
had that figured out.
She knew that ahead of time, yeah.
Yes. And when you graduated from Sulphur Springs High School, from the 11th grade, what happened to Hobbs then?
Well, he went 1 semester to Commerce.
All right.
And then Uncle Billy Dish came to Sulphur Springs in the summer. Uncle Billy Dish was the baseball coach at the University of Texas in Austin.
Yes.
And he shook my hand and said, "I'd like to have you in Austin." So I went to Austin then for the spring baseball workout.
Yes.
With the university. And then shortly after that, in December, I went to Uncle Sam and was in the forces. I was in the Army Air Corps at that point. But
Army Air Corps.
And when I came back from the Army Air Corps, I went back down there, and Bill Falk was the baseball coach.
Yes.
So I played 3 years down there as after I returned from the service.
All right, now, what position did you play those last 3 years?
Left field and pitcher.
Left field and pitcher.
Ruthie, I probably have one memory that'll always be strong in my mind, is that was hitting a grand slam home run in the first College World Series.
You were in a College World Series?
That was the first one they ever had. It was in Denver.
Yes.
It was off of Jackie Jensen, who went on to become a Red Sox star. And when I got in, Bibb Falk was an ex-major leaguer. And he always called us all mullets, to make any difference.
Yes.
He said, "You may not be big leaguers, but you can act like it." Yeah. So we wore ties on the bus to wherever we was going to play, and then got into our uniforms. But anyhow, he came down at the end of the dugout where I was sitting down, and I just knew he had to say something good to me at that point. And he said, "Oh, that ball sure carries in this light air, doesn't it?"
Because you were in Denver.
Yeah, I was ready to shoot him.
Yeah, not the truth.
But that was him.
Yes, yes.
That's the strongest memory I have of all of it.
And getting to play in that World Series, wasn't that an exciting and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity?
Well, at that point, it was the first time they'd had one, so we really didn't know what we was getting into.
Yes.
And we rode the train to Denver. Of course, you would fly there now, but at that point, we rode the train. We got off the train and went through the terminal, and we stayed in the not the Jefferson Hotel, but a hotel across the street from it. And there was an open manhole cover, kind of on the side of the street when we came out of the terminal. And Bobby Lane went over and looked down in there, and he said, "Come on over," said, "this is for the opening of the underworld." So we were just country boys come to town.
Y'all had a good time.
Yes, we did.
Sure did. After the University of Texas, what was the first teaching job that you had, and what was your major?
Well, my major was education, but it was my BS was in science and math.
Good.
And then my master's was in education.
In education.
And I just stayed at the university until I got my master's.
Good, good.
And I came out of there and went to Kearns, Texas to teach.
Kearns, Texas, okay.
And I was a coach and a high school principal and a math teacher and a science teacher all at the same time.
What was your next step after Kearns?
Grand Prairie.
Came right to Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
Who invited you to Grand Prairie?
H.H. Chambers.
Mr. H.H. Chambers, superintendent.
Now, the reason I came to Grand Prairie on a Saturday to interview with him, and then went over Saturday later to interview with James Martin in Arlington.
Yes.
I was looking for a job up here because our third daughter had cerebral palsy.
Yes.
She was born as an RH baby. And so I had to get closer to the hospital.
The hospitals and doctors.
And the treatment. And I went back home after that, and Monday morning Miss Chambers called me and said, "I want to hire you." that afternoon, Mr. Martin called and said, I want to hire you. I said, I'm sorry. I've already promised Mr. Chambers. And he said, well, I said, no, it doesn't make any difference. I'm not bargaining with anybody. I've already told him I'd be there. So I came to Grand Prairie, and I was there from then on.
Is that 1981-ish?
No.
Or 71-ish?
No, I'd be 56.
56, way back in the dark ages.
Well, everything's dark.
Yes, and you started out at what school?
I started out at Jefferson.
Jefferson Middle School, which
Well,
was
it was Jefferson
junior high
at
then.
that point, yeah.
And from Jefferson, where'd you go?
I was there 1 year, and then I went to Grand Prairie High School as a science teacher and a baseball coach.
Oh, well, good.
But in being a head baseball coach, I had to also be an assistant football coach and assistant basketball coach.
Yes, yes.
And taught 4 classes.
Yes.
And the year before, the semester before that, when I was at Jefferson, I came over after school was out and coached baseball in the spring of that year, and then moved over to Grand Prairie High School the next year.
Yes, as principal.
No.
No, still as a teacher?
I was a
coach?
Teacher
and a coach?
And a coach at that point. And I went from that to assistant principal in Grand Prairie High School.
All right.
Then from that, Mr. Chambers asked me to come down and take over the maintenance of the whole district.
Yes.
I did that for you. I said, I'll do that under one circumstances. You don't take me out of the line for a high school or middle school principal, or secondary principal, I think is the way I put it. So the next year then, I went back to Jefferson as the principal. Tom Holly went to high school. And then 3 years later, I went to Grand Prairie High School as an assistant principal.
Yes.
And then I became principal of it for the next 10 years. Then they moved me to Adams as a principal the second year Adams was open.
Yes.
And then I came to the administration building as a director of secondary. And then I became superintendent of schools.
Superintendent of schools. And
what
a ladder you have climbed.
Well, I grew up with the system.
Yes.
It's unbelievable when I look at it now.
Yes.
That this system, of course, at that time, Irving and Arlington were just growing like mad.
Yes.
We had the Chance Vault. It was Chance Vault, Liam Timco, and then back to Chance Vault again. And it was in full bloom. It was running real well. We got money from the government for handling the children of the workers at Chance Vault.
Yes.
And but we were just our growth was predictable. Each year we knew what was going to have the next year. Arlington and Irving were growing so fast they had no earthly idea what their enrollment would be.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to plan ahead where they couldn't. They were fighting a battle of building the school after it was needed. Mm-hmm. We had the advantage of building the school when we knew it was going to be needed.
Well, one thing about it, when they selected you as superintendent, it wasn't a slam dunk, because I looked in the records and it said 4 voted for you and 3 voted for someone else, but you became the superintendent. But now, when the board met the other day, they voted on who to name a school in honor of Mr. Hobbs Williams Jr., and you got a 7-0 vote on that one. So your vote's coming up. Your vote's coming up. That is really good. Not only have you seen where this school is going to be, you have seen some of the columns going up, and isn't it majestic?
It's unbelievable to me that thing will be ready to go in September.
That thing is better be ready to go in September. Mr. Vernon will be very unhappy if that's not ready to go.
Let me tell you something that nobody can express. The feeling of my wife and myself seeing those people out there this morning.
That's wonderful.
We had not seen them in, what, 20 years?
years.
Or that, well, maybe off and on, but not the group like that in about 20 years.
Now that brings us to the point. You're going to have to stop and tell us about your family. Tell us about your wife, what she did as a career when she was here. Give us a little summation of that.
Well, Ruthie, she ought to be.
Well, give me her full name and her maiden name. I want her maiden name in this record.
She was, before I married her at the University of Texas,
yes.
She was Doris Carolyn Dietz.
Spell that last name.
Dietze.
Is that German?
That is German.
That sounds exciting.
Her folks were German. That's where our grandkids get calling her Big Mama and me Big Papa, because if you transmit Grandpa and Grandma into English from German, it comes out Big Mama and Big Papa.
Oh, that is good. That is good.
So that's, but yes, she was German.
And she taught school here, didn't she?
Oh, for 30 years.
Yes, for 30 years.
She started out at Lamar and went from Lamar to Dalworth.
Yes.
And she went then, when I became superintendent, she, at that point, she could not teach in this system where I was going to be superintendent.
Yes, yes.
So she was hired in Duncanville.
Good.
So she
finished her career there?
Yeah, finished her last 5 or 6 years there. So we retired at the same time. She had 35 years in teaching, because she started in at Camp Currens while we were there. And then when we moved here, she started right off at Lamar.
All right, name your children.
My oldest one is Linda.
Yes. And
Linda Carol Williams. She is now Linda Crabtree.
Yes, married to Mr. Bill Crabtree, who helped me set up this record.
Yeah.
He has been invaluable.
He's been a pretty good son-in-law.
Yes, he has.
But at the same time, Lee, who was the second one to come along.
Yes.
And he is Byron Lee Jr. and lives next door to us at Lake Hawkins.
Good.
And Joe, who was born the RH baby, the third one, we lost when she was 19.
Okay. Now we have all of the family squared away. I'd like to know, I know that you taught me ground school when I decided I wanted to be a pilot. How did you get mixed up in that pilot business?
When I tell people that Ruthie Jackson used to be my student, they won't believe me. I'm glad you said that. Well, the way I got mixed up in it was, of course, being
a pilot
in the service.
Yes.
I came out and I was still flying light planes here, and some of my kids at school, at Grand Prairie High School, couldn't take a particular course.
Yeah.
So I started teaching them ground school and called aeronautics for credit, but it was all after school. I had about 40 kids in the class.
In the lunchroom?
In the lunchroom.
Yes, you did.
After class.
Yes.
And then Dan Clemson, your son-in-law,
yes,
asked me one time something about would I teach you. I said, sure, I'll be glad to teach you ground school. And from that, you and Vernon and I don't remember who all was in that class other than y'all.
As far as I know, Dan and I were the only two from our company in it.
Well, Dan's the only one that actually finished up, went on and become a pilot.
And did you know why he did? Mr. Jackson had the rule, and he said, you can both go to ground school, but only one of you can be the pilot, because I don't want two people on my staff both being a pilot, because that's a pretty dangerous thing, because he built airplanes during the war, and I guess he knew that he knew they weren't quite as safe as everyone thought they were. Yeah. So he actually let Dan be the pilot. Mm-hmm. But I got ground school, and that was invaluable to know about ground school, because that's the basics.
Yeah, that's a good it's good information. It's a good, to know how things operate.
Oh, yes.
It makes it a whole lot more pleasant for you to fly or to,
Yes.
go to an airport. You're not completely at a loss for what's going on.
Well, I think this aeronautics that you generated for the kids, was that at Grand Prairie High School?
Yes.
At Grand Prairie High School?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you know that they think so much of you for having given that extra time, and of course they gave extra time, but that is marvelous.
Well, a number of those kids went on and became pilots.
Oh, they did.
In fact, one of them I know flew for Braniff for quite a while, and then of course Braniff went under and he went to American Airlines.
Yes.
And there's about 3 or 4 of them that have flown for different airlines, and have one that is now in the Air Force and the Pentagon. That, in fact, that kid made he's a general, so he's a kid to me, but he's a general. Gosh, I can't even think of his name now.
We'll get to it later.
Bill, tell me his name.
Is it Mike Mosley?
Mike Mosley.
General Mike Mosley with 4 stars.
Yeah.
And you taught him. That is so wonderful.
That's been some time ago,
Yes, it has.
He's had an opportunity to grow, too.
We have 2 generals that came from Grand Prairie. He came from South, and we had a young man named Minor, I believe, that was, it might not have been Minor. We'll have to scratch that one. We'll find out who he is.
Yeah, I don't, when you consider from 56 to now, they've had plenty of time to do a whole lot of things.
Yes, they have. They really have.
And I'm sure that I've got some of them in prison. But I don't know about that. I never hear about them.
Yes, but we keep up with those that get 4 stars, like General Mike Mosley, right?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Now that you have retired from being superintendent and you moved to the country, where do you live now?
Live at Lake Hawkins, own Lake Hawkins.
And is that in East Texas?
That's in East Texas. It's about it's about 13 miles east of Mineola. It's about 23 miles north of Tyler, right on Highway 14 and 80 where they cross.
Yes.
And it's a lake, and then of course Holly Lake is about 11 miles from us.
So you do a lot of fishing?
I did more fishing before I retired down there than I do now.
Than you do now.
Living right across the road from the lake.
That's
but
perfect.
I don't have time to fish.
Are you writing a book?
Heaven to Betsy, no.
Not writing a book?
No, I don't. No, that's.
But I believe you teach a Sunday school class.
Well, I just retired from that after 40 years. I thought they'd heard enough of me.
40 years you taught?
Not that particular Sunday school class, but I've been teaching Sunday school. Chester McQuarrie, one of the members of your board here.
Yes,
was one of my
one
young
of your students?
One of my students in high school. Yeah, at the First Methodist Church over here.
Yes.
Then I had him in high school. Then he came back to teach for me, and now he's on the board.
What about the new principal that's been selected, Jean, I believe, Wilson Nunez?
Yes, I had her in school too.
Now, isn't that ironic that she would get to be the first principal of the Hobbs Williams Elementary School, and that she was one of your students? I think that is just perfect and priceless.
Well, I don't deserve it, but I darn sure appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the new school is next door to one of your good friends, the middle school of Bill Arnold.
Yeah.
Now, both of these campuses together, that is an awesome looking site out on Southeast 14th Street.
That's unbelievable. It really is. And the fact that they're together makes it so much nicer. We've only had one situation where we had a high school and a middle school then on the same campus.
Yes.
And that was great.
Yes.
That's South Grand Prairie and Jackson.
Yes.
And I think it just makes the facilities available to all of them.
Yes. Well, now that Jackson's gone from the South Grand Prairie High Campus, but they're getting a new Science Center building and a new building that's where they're going to be able to do their performances inside. Isn't that wonderful?
Ruthie, I can't believe the way this place has grown.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about back in '56. I'm talking about in the last 10 years.
Okay.
It's just unbelievable. This building here, the new administration building for the schools, it's just out of this
It's really
world.
great, isn't it?
I'm just tickled to death for people. Yeah.
It's been so much fun having you here today to talk about the real Hobbs Williams and the fact that you are so well thought of that they have named an elementary school for you, which will go on for years and years, and people will hear about you and know about you after you and I have already gone to heaven. It's real splendid, and I want you to look out into your camera and just say, in about 1 minute, I don't want you to take longer than that, and say, thank you all for thinking of me, or something real great like that to end this show. And then we're going to ask Amy to do what we did this morning out at the site on another program and extend this history to our history tape number 616. So 15 and 16 will be right together.
I never felt like I was worth that much, Ruthie.
Here's your camera. Talk to the camera and talk to Grand Prairie people.
Well, there's no way in the world that I can ever say thank you. My wife ought to be here with me on this couch, because whatever we did together.
But she declined, didn't she?
Yes, and she's as much of this business as I am. She's had more of these kids in school that remember her more than some of mine remember me. But whatever we did together. This is just an unbelievable situation. As I said, I don't deserve it, but we certainly do appreciate it. And I'd like to thank the people of Grand Prairie. When you realize that it's been I retired in '86, it's been 22 years since we retired, and it's been 20 years since we left Grand Prairie, that anybody would still even remember who we are.
Well, I want you to know that Mr. Jackson and I join in saying congratulations to a splendid family, and maybe we can get the library at the elementary school of the Hobbs Williams Elementary, maybe we can get that named in honor of your wife, or something really great. That may be the next petition that we carry.
You're great.
Thank you for being here with us today. You're spectacular, and we're so proud of you. We're looking forward to September when you'll be back, and we'll have a ball out there in the dedication.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, and this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do, and that we document it correctly. And thank you for watching this interview that's very special to Grand Prairie, Texas and the Grand Prairie ISD.